Well, there's a lot of propaganda out there regarding the shutdown. The Dems blame the Republicans for not negotiating with them. The Republicans are saying the Democrats want to provide free health care to all the illegal immigrants. What's the truth? Well, polls right now suggest that Republican voters are blaming the Republican Party more than they're blaming Democrats. So if there's any way of winning the public perception, the Democrats are winning, according to polls right now. But what's interesting is the high levels of propaganda being put out by our government. Don't take it from me. Everybody is noticing it. From when you call the White House, Caroline Leavitt has a voicemail blaming Democrats. Veterans Affairs websites blaming Democrats. Housing and Urban Development blaming Democrats. But I think most people understand this sort of blaming the Democrats is not working, at least according to the polls. Have a listen.
I'm not used to seeing naked political propaganda on a government website. Are you worried about this violating the Hatch Act?
No, sir, we're not worried at all. And this is not about propaganda, Chris. This is just about letting the American people know what's going on. What we really need to be talking about how this government shutdown.
So look at it. The radical left in Congress shut down the government. HUD will use available resources to help Americans in need. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is going to use this shutdown to continue his Doge cuts and say, oh, the Democrats wanted to shut down. I guess we're going to have to continue slashing things. When in fact, a shutdown of the government is essentially like a pause of the government, right? It's the government's not being funded right now. Trump deciding to fire, lay off, furlough all these other programs, that's not something you need to do. That's like saying, oh, you talked back to me. You asked for me to punch you in the face. What? No.
Impacts the American people.
I want to do that, but this is part of the impact, right? I mean, when you're saying the radical left is shutting it down and they're doing it for $1.5 trillion for illegals, that's not true, Secretary Turner. That's why I'm bringing it up, because it's propaganda.
Well, you know what, though, Chris, you look at this, and I've heard all the cries and the outcry and people saying this is propaganda, that it's a violation of the Hatch Act. You know, to me, the Democrats and the far left are using this as a distraction to really deflect from what's really important here, and that's how it's been irresponsible actions on the Hill, and American people are being impacted greatly by this government shutdown. That's what we...
The fuck did he just say? Did that make any sense? The reason the Democrats are not funding the government right now and agreeing to the Republicans is because they are fighting for the $1 trillion that is going to be cut to Medicare. The $1 trillion that's going to be cut is going to double, in a lot of cases, even more than that, people's healthcare premiums. The Republicans had a bill, which is a tax cut for the ultra wealthy. And that's $1 trillion that they need to find somewhere and slash it to help pay for that. And these entitlement programs, which is a term used for the subsidies that go to the people that need it, in this case, trying to bring down the cost of people's health care, which, again, it sucks. It's not affordable. It's only going to get so much worse for something like 20 million people. The Democrats are saying that's more important than signing away the papers that keep the government funded right now. This is the only leverage that they have. This is why it's so important. And I think people have a hard time, and maybe I'm not doing a great job explaining it, but when you continue to hear Republicans claim that it's about funding illegals' health care, that means they don't have a winning message. That's all they have. This idea that, yeah, do some illegal immigrants get health care in different states depending on the policies of, yeah, absolutely. But to the tune of a percentage point of the bigger issue here. So they're mischaracterizing what this is all about. Here's a voicemail plays when you call the White House.
Thank you for calling the White House comment line. Hello, America. This is White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Democrats in Congress have shut down the federal government because they care more about funding health care for illegal immigrants than they care about serving you, the American people. Until Democrats vote for the clean, Republican-backed continuing resolution to reopen the government, the White House is unable to answer your call or respond to your questions.
Yeah, okay, the White House, yeah, they were absolutely going to help you, but now they can't. Our hands are tied. Now, don't get me wrong. Trump's going to use this to his advantage. It's whether or not the people are going to buy it. Here's what AOC had to say about the question. Is the shutdown really over healthcare for illegal immigrants?
No. Not even a little bit. Not even at all. This is what Republicans love to do. Whenever we fight to elevate the minimum wage, to expand Social Security, to make healthcare better in this country. In order to derail that, Republicans love to dangle this shiny object that says, but what if someone not like you gets it?
Yeah, it's kind of like the idea, I'm for universal health care, a system where we all pay in and we all get back. We get rid of the middleman, insurance, the billion-dollar industry, and we drive the cost down that way through sort of like a collective demand of negotiating those prices. And then someone might say, well, does that mean that someone who is trans, you'll pay for their transition? And you go, well, if that's the health care that they need, then I don't see that being a problem because it's really like such a niche issue. It's like so much smaller than people that need to get their heart checked out and maybe have breast cancer and that need to deal with getting their moles looked at and they have a cough and they don't, and then, oh, Dave Neal wants to fund and it's like, and that's what and that's what we saw. The biggest campaign wedge in this past election was Donald Trump's commercial, Kamala's for they, them, not you. And it was all from something taken out of context about universal health care and the fact that if you have universal health care, you provide health care for all. Again, it's such a niche issue. It affects such a tiny, tiny percentage of people. And yet that's what they want to hold on to, commandeer, to rob everybody else of their basic rights to affordable health care.
The fact of the matter is undocumented people do not and cannot access and be covered by the ACA, Medicaid, Medicare, period. There are dozens of laws in the books that enforce that, and that can be a whole other conversation. However, the fact is the Democratic proposal doesn't change that either. We are trying to change the immediate cliff where the ACA, as well as community health center funding and other kinds of healthcare funding, are about to go off a cliff and hurt millions of people.
Yeah, it's like the Democrats aren't trying to change anything. They're trying to prevent the big, beautiful bill from destroying inevitably what is about to be destroyed. And they know this. They know there's no good faith, like keep the government funded and we'll negotiate this later, because the last time that they tried to negotiate, the Republicans took the ball and ran with it. And that's what happened. And there's no good faith there. This is the only leverage that Democrats have. So Trump posted this yesterday. I have a meeting today with Russ Vought, he of Project 2025 fame, to determine which of the many Democrat agencies, most of which are a political scam, he recommends to be cut, and whether or not those cuts will be temporary or permanent. I can't believe the radical left Democrats gave me this unprecedented opportunity. They are not stupid people, so maybe this is their way of wanting to quietly and quickly make America great again, President Donald J. Trump. Wait, hold on a second. Are the radical lefts dumb or not dumb? I don't understand. He said they're idiots, now they're not stupid. Now, so he's saying, since they let the government shut down, they're letting me do whatever the hell I want. You have to understand, folks. You have to understand. This is the president of the United States, posting crazy AI videos about fake news stories and wild stuff. The president of the United States, who previously said, I know nothing about Project 2025, even though these marionettes have had their fist up Donald Trump's ass, just dangling. They've done like 70% of the project so far. And he said, I have no idea who they are. And then he hires them into his cabinet, a cabinet full of billionaires. He now is saying, well, if they want to shut the government down, I'm going to do as I please. And yet we still have a conversation with people about whether they think this is a fascist government or not. So Kamala responds, this was always the plan. Project 2025 was Donald Trump's blueprint to seize unchecked power within the federal government and restrict Americans' freedoms. He is implementing it right in front of our eyes. And you know what I find interesting is the Project 2025 was written by the Heritage Foundation, which is the foundation that wrote the healthcare plan in Massachusetts under Republican Governor Mitt Romney, which later became the blueprint for the Obamacare. And that's what's so interesting about Obamacare. A lot of people say universal health care won't work because Obamacare, knocked me off my coverage and this and that. And Obamacare might have been just some duct tape on a sinking ship, really. That's why you need universal health care. Something that just fucking covers it all. And will the system be sort of, maxed out for a couple years while people finally go and get their, their chubby ankles checked out? Absolutely. And maybe there's a way that we can subsidize people's, university fees, their college loans, if they're going to get into medicine. We need to make America healthier. It's just the way in which it needs to be done is giving people access. Like I was sick a few months ago. And I went to an urgent care while I was on the road. It cost me $700. Had I known, on top of my $1,300 I already pay monthly. Had I known that's what it would have cost, I probably wouldn't have gotten tested. I probably would have spread whatever shit I had going around to other people. Like, our country's sick because we're keeping our head in the sand to avoid the problems we have. That's why 60,000 people a year are dying, because they can't mentally wrap their head around how expensive healthcare is, that they just would rather rub some Robitussin on it, as Chris Rock says. So here we have Chris Murphy of Connecticut talking about everything the president just said he wants to do and why it's just not legal. Like, you can't be doing this.
I mean, listen, we're not dumb. The American people aren't dumb. They know exactly what happened here. Literally within hours of the government shutting down, the White House announced that they were suspending major projects for one city in America, the one city that happens to be represented by the Democratic leader in the House and the Democratic leader in the Senate. What they did is likely illegal. The White House doesn't have the ability to just decide to spend money in Republican states and not spend money in Democratic states.
I mean, it's just ridiculous, right? And Trump essentially is like the guy who's picking a fight at the bar, and then the Democrats finally stand up and punch him in the nose, and then Trump claims that he broke his nose. And it's like, you brought this on. You know, our country has a lot of problems, but the lack of civility, the lack of respect, the sort of villainizing of each side, this came about when Donald Trump started questioning Obama's birth certificate. This is when it came out, when someone just shared their racism just right out loud. So here's Caroline Leavitt. She's talking about what, sort of cuts they're about to make because she believes they have the power to do so. Now that it's like the Democrats wanted to shut the government down. Well, we might as well just go fuck everybody over.
Fix this problem. And look, we have $0 coming into the federal government right now because the Democrats shut it down. So what Russ Vought is working diligently on is examining how we can fix this mess to ensure that critical funding continues, that we can get people paid. But the Democrats are making that very difficult.
Meanwhile, the Democrats were there ready to negotiate, and reports said that in that Oval Office, Trump said, "Fuck you." And they said no. And this is kind of like the game of chicken that they want to play. But the polls are in. The polls are in, and they are favoring Democratic support right now over this issue. This messaging will go on. They'll share all of their propaganda. But I think people understand how much money they're going to have to pay if, take this for example. This shutdown is happening. Here's Bret Baier, right? This dude is so far up Trump's ass, right? He does all of the friendly, Trump town halls. I have to say, though, he's also been very generous to Bernie Sanders, so I do think there's some hope here. But here's a moment where maybe he's going to be a little critical of what the government's doing.
Jessica, that letter from the OMB director is essentially a threat that this shutdown happens. You're going to fire people that the discretionary funding doesn't cover.
And Donald Trump made the same threat when he was speaking earlier today as well. He said we can do a lot of really bad things. We can do things that they don't want us to do. And yes, Democrats don't want people to get fired, and Democrats don't want people to lose their health care. But I think the Republican Party is trying to act like they have the upper hand, and they just don't on the merits.
Yeah, they don't. And that's why they continue to talk about the illegal immigrant thing, because that's the card that they have. So very interesting that Bret Baier here is saying, oh yeah, the government's threatening to fire its own U.S. citizens for no reason other than to punish the Democrats. What? Here's Tim Miller. And again, this is a little bit more Epstein-y, but here's Tim Miller, a great commentator. He used to be Republican, and I don't know exactly if he's a Democrat or independent or what now, but he used to be a Republican, and he's sort of an anti-MAGA guy. He understands how ridiculous this is. Talking about Howard Lutnick.
The thing I want to say about Lutnick, and this is going to maybe seem like a low blow, but it's kind of an important low blow, is that the Commerce Secretary is really stupid. Like, in a cabinet of dumb people, like where you have a weekend talk show host and a fake wrestling executive, he stands out as the dumbest. And if you polled the cabinet, they would all say that he's the dumbest based on reporting. And that's important to say because, sometimes dumb people just don't know how to cover up, how to stay in line with the talking points. All Lutnick is saying there is just the obvious truth, right? That you and I know, that Tara knows, as well as anybody, that Lutnick just it isn't.
So what Lutnick said, I'm just going to paraphrase here, is that he basically said Epstein was so creepy and he was offering people massages, and clearly he was videotaping these massages and using it as blackmail. Now, why is that so damning is that the Department of Justice said there was no one else involved, there was no blackmail. And so because of this, Howard Lutnick now is going to have to testify over things he openly said, on a podcast or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that it just goes to show the truth will always rise to the surface.
Clicking with him, that like he needs to go along with the plan as part of this cover-up, right? That he needs to be saying these farcical lies that Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are saying about how, the Justice Department doesn't know anything more about this, right? Like, we know they're covering, we don't know exactly what they're covering up, but we know they're covering something up. We know that there were other co-conspirators at some level. We don't know exactly what.
Kash Patel knows, quote, put on your big boy pants and tell us who the pedophiles are.
Right. So it's obvious that there was some kind of co-conspirator. And to Tara's point, it's like, just the scale of the number of women, it's just not physically possible.
Yeah. So this Epstein thing, and now the government won't, they kicked the can down the road on approving the new Congress member who would have been the deciding vote to get a vote. So they have to vote on whether or not they would vote on the Epstein files release. And they kicked the can down the road until the government was shut down. I bet you Trump would love this government to stay shut down literally until the midterms where they could try to rig the next election. I mean, at some point, they're going to share the Epstein files. Are they waiting for the government? Are they waiting for the government to turn things around in the economy to rip roar and people won't notice? Like, this is gonna happen. I think we're out of time here, but a lot of conversations about free speech and all of the issues going on as the government kind of shares all this propaganda. But here's something I find really interesting. Caroline Leavitt always wears that big shiny cross, right? She's a Christian, at least claims to be. And this is my issue I've had with Christians is that they at this point, not everybody, but in office here, as a representative who prays before she does her press conferences, here you have the Pope, right? The highest leader in all of Christianity, right? The highest mere mortal. And the Pope tells her, is talking about the inhumane treatment of migrants, and she doesn't say, well, the Pope, I respect. She disagrees with the Pope and does whataboutism, which is starts to blame it on the previous administration. Unbelievable stuff right here. I'm not saying this should stop her from getting into heaven, but put her on the wait list now.
Someone who says that I'm against abortion, but I'm in agreement with the inhuman treatment of immigrants who are in the United States. I don't know if that's pro-life.
I would reject there is inhumane treatment of illegal immigrants in the United States under this administration. There was, however, significant inhumane treatment of illegal immigrants in the previous administration as they were being trafficked and raped and beaten, and in many cases killed over our United States southern border.
Now, of course, that's not by government officials. That's a tragic situation of migrants trying to fight for their life to seek a better life. Now, but what's interesting here is we've got body cam footage of ICE agents literally shooting and killing people that are being disappeared. And again, in that one case that came out this week, the guy that was shot, they said, well, he dragged me by my car. And then afterwards, the body cam footage shows the cop going, minor lacerations, I think I'm fine. And a man's dead now. Somebody's father, someone's wife who relied on their husband to go out there and be the breadwinner for them, gone. That's just one case. All of the people from Alligator Alcatraz that are still unaccounted for. Those that are still in one of the most brutal prisons in another country, shipped out of here to another country, in sometimes languages they don't even speak. And the gall for her to say, I'm rejecting what the Pope's saying right now. Look in the fucking mirror.
You also look at the inhumane treatment at the hands of some of these illegal immigrants that took place under the previous administration as well.
And so the whataboutism, the idea that, yes, bad things will happen, but immigrants commit less crimes than citizens do, for the most part, because most immigrants, they don't want to be in the criminal system because they will get deported. Now, there is always going to be an example of something tragic that happens, and they'll use that example to then say the Pope is wrong. Well, I mean, it just goes to show, and I've had this issue with my own family, and I've talked about it, that, my family that's Catholic, When I told them, hey, the Catholic Church, they recommend who to vote for. They tell you based on policies and they recommended Joe Biden. They did. That's who they recommended. And I told my family that, and they laughed. Oh, ha, 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 ha. They chose the political ideology over what was their lifetime religious North Star. That's what they chose. And I'm not here just to defend religion. Religion's got a lot of flaws. I'm here to always point that out, right? Mortal man always is going to take religion and manipulate it for its own benefit. But it just goes to show how strong that thing is that it's hard to change people's minds. I hate to call it a cult, right? But hey, I feel like most of those in the cult have already left. So that's what we're here to speak truth to power. And boy, you could talk for 30 minutes at a time, and then the quick response is, so-and-so's got derangement syndrome. Okay, pal, whatever. That's it for me. You guys know every Friday afternoon we like to end the episode with our middle fingers up, telling our boss to go fuck themselves. Enjoy your weekend. Have a blast out there. Do something I wouldn't do, and then some. And we'll see you back here on Monday. We might have bonus weekend coverage, so hit the subscribe button to find out. We'll see you later. I'm Dave. This is The Rush.